I'm Madison Timmons.
And I'm JT Timmons.
And we're the co-creators of the hit podcast, The Most Haunted City on Earth.
Look, we love ghosts, but we also love true crime. So we here at Haunted City Studios decided to create From One to Wicked.
A true crime podcast with a killer twist. We'll investigate,
discuss,
then rate
the most brutal and devious crimes and the monsters who commit them.
On a scale from 1 to wicked. So sit back and kill some time with us.
And remember, next time you're walking down the street,
you might just be passing a perfect wicked 10. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of From One to Wicked. My name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Samantha the Possum.
Oh, no. Nobody knows what that is, JT. So Samantha the Possum I was driving home today when we're filming this, and I pulled up to our back little parking area, and we have a tree, a old mulberry tree that JT had to cut down because after the storm, it had knocked it sideways and it was going to fall into the side of the house. So JT destroyed it, but there is like enough of a tree for, I guess, a possum to climb in. But I roll up and there's this super fat possum.
This is large.
And she was in the back area and she just starts crawling up the tree. And so I sent it to JT and I was like, only at our house. We live in the middle of downtown Savannah, mind you. So the fact that there's a possum just vibing, crazy. But yeah, she was really cute and she was just chilling in the tree. And I took a photo of her and I named her Samantha because she had a really sweet face and she looked like a Samantha. So, yeah, so that's JT today.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah. So anywho... yeah, welcome, y'all. Today we are going to be discussing the Ken and Barbie Killers.
Ooh.
No relation to Mattel or the Barbie movie, for that matter. But they are pretty heinous, and I have a feeling they might get a pretty decently high score.
Okay.
But yeah, so we're trying to. Obviously, we enjoy discussing some of the current criminals amongst our rankings and whatnot. But I wanted to do some where we had full-fledged crimes. They had been convicted, like all that sort of stuff. So it wasn't so alleged, if you will. And so, yeah, this one I was pretty excited to do some research into, and I think y'all will enjoy. And we are currently...
Well, I'm excited.
Yeah, and we are currently live streaming for what we call our Parajunkies, and they originally came and joined us on Patreon for our other podcast, which is The Most Haunted City on Earth. So if you don't listen to that one, go check that out. It's all paranormal and whatnot.
Yep.
But they also enjoy listening to true crime as well, and so they're here. I mentioned a little bit before we started filming, I was saying that I feel like it would be beneficial to have a secondary title for the Parajunkies who also listen to this podcast. So my bid is the Crimeaholics, but y'all Parajunkies in the comments, let us know what you would like to be called. And as always, we do like to say that this is an interactive podcast. So yes, we will be rating the crimes on our criteria of brutality, premeditation, motive, difficulty of investigation, and body count. But also, Parajunkies are going to be rating live with us. And then y'all also in the comments after you listen to the podcast, give us your ratings as well, and we will total it up.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. We already have Frenchie in the live stream saying that her husband says the gumshoes. It's an old term used for detective, which is really interesting. I kind of like that.
That is.
Yeah. And Malia says crime coven, which is pretty cool too.
That is pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll create a poll on Patreon.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go ahead and get into it, though.
For sure.
All right. So Paul, Bernardo, and Karla Homolka are now dubbed as the Ken and Barbie Killers because of their serial rapes and murders that they committed. They were given that name because of their traditionally attractive looks.
Okay.
And if you listen to this on YouTube, you're probably, if you don't already know what they look like, you have seen their faces because They are kind of in that montage, I believe. But yeah, they do look like traditionally attractive people and people you wouldn't necessarily expect to have committed such heinous crimes. So kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and I watched a documentary on it a while ago, but I surprisingly
Don't recall a lot?
Well, I absorb so many crime docs like all of our listeners,
Yeah.
it some of it kind of gets lost. Some of the stuff that I'm super familiar with will never be lost, obviously. But I thought I was more familiar with this, and thinking back at it, I'm like, well, I mean, I know he started out as a different criminal, like the name and whatnot. But the crimes they committed together, I just can't recall many. So it's not new for me, but it's kind of
a lot of it there's certain aspects that I think are gonna trigger those memories back into your mind, because when I was doing research, I could remember specific things, but then I was doing more digging and I was like, oh, I do remember that. Okay, I remember that, things like that. And I think that is, why so many people listen to, even if you are familiar with cases, a lot of times people like to listen to the stories again, because sometimes there's things you forget about the cases and whatnot. But yeah. So anywho, the crimes of serial rapist and murderer Paul Bernardo and his wife Karla Homolka particularly started in the 1990s sex slayings of teenagers Leslie Mahaffy and Kristen French, and they were among some of the most horrifying and controversial crimes in Canadian history. And so, yes.
This is Canada.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Canadian serial killers.
And so, yes, you were correct, JT. He did start out as a different title, and that was the Scarborough Rapist.
Yep.
And so around 1 a.m. on May 4th, 1987, a young woman was attacked and raped within minutes of getting off a bus near her home in Scarborough, a suburb of Toronto. This was one of a series of up to 24 rapes or attempted rapes that took place over a 5-year period. The targets of the man called the Scarborough Rapists were teenage girls and young women. Most of the attacks happened outdoors, but in at least one instance, the perpetrator broke into his victim's home. The attacks were accompanied by beatings, intense verbal abuse, and dire threats to discourage victims from going to the police. On one occasion, a uniformed Toronto police officer staking out a bus shelter spotted a suspect hiding under a tree and pursued him on foot, but the suspect escaped. On November 17, 1988, Metropolitan Toronto Police formed a task force committed to the arrest of the Scarborough Rapist. Investigators did not get a significant lead until May of 1990, when a victim provided them a description of her attacker's face. Police created a computer composite portrait that was given wide circulation, including publication in newspapers. Among the 16,000 responses received over the following weeks were 3 from people who said the portrait resembled Paul Bernardo.
Okay.
Investigators twice questioned Bernardo, who lived in his parents' Scarborough home at the time. They were satisfied that he was not a likely suspect, which we'll come to find out was a big fumble on their front. But as a matter of routine, they took samples of his hair, blood, and saliva for DNA testing against specimens found on rape victims' clothing. DNA testing was then new in Canada, and the Centre of Forensic Sciences, at CFS, in Toronto, had only one qualified scientist and one technician. And the samples taken from dozens of men questioned in the Scarborough Rapist case were among 50,000 collected at the time by police investigating numerous cases across Ontario.
It's a really good composite.
That's the composite?
That's the composite.
Wow. That's super interesting.
Not bad, huh?
It really isn't. Yeah, it does look like him.
Yeah.
And so just bear all of that in mind while we are discussing the rest of these crimes. So he was already, at the time when they were killing and whatnot, he had already been like a very serial criminal.
Yeah.
So the first death really was of Tammy Homolka, and that was Karla's sister.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yes.
No. Okay, I guess I gotta hear about it.
Yeah. It's very
That's
nuanced. This whole case
wild.
is very interesting in a lot of ways.
So we're already on to the murders. That was just like
that was a prerequisite of his background of what he had been doing prior to this.
Okay.
Because the murders were where Karla started getting involved. But anyways, so December 23rd, 1990, Bernardo, who was 26, was engaged to Karla Homolka, who was 20, and was living at her family's home in St. Catharines, Ontario. Paul was very annoyed that Karla was not a virgin when he met her. It was therefore, from his point of view, her responsibility to make it possible for Paul to take the virginity of Karla's pretty younger sister, Tammy.
Okay.
Yeah. Without her knowledge or consent.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This escalated so quickly.
That's how this case works, unfortunately.
Like obviously not the Scarborough stuff, but like just from like, being engaged to Karla and then is like, you're not a virgin, so I have to. Wow, that is nuts.
Yes. Once Karla accepted that logic, because I'm not kidding. I feel, and we'll discuss, audacity, Frenchie said.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll discuss Karla a little bit more too, like just on like our opinions of this, because I do feel like Karla was manipulated a lot in this. I'm not saying that her actions were not punishable, but I do feel like she was under Paul's thumb a lot of the time.
You're saying this is an Eric Harris to Dylan Klebold type of deal.
Kind
where
of,
it's like Eric Harris, a lot of people, obviously they both committed the horrible crime at the Columbine shooting, but a lot of people say Eric Harris is the main offender and was psychologically manipulating Dylan.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And like I said, we'll discuss a little bit later on.
All right.
But yeah. So once Karla accepted that logic, the rest was easy. Even the idea of videotaping the whole thing seemed to make sense to her. After all, videotaping was a way to remember important events.
Okay.
Karla worked in a veterinary clinic, so she had a rudimentary knowledge of sedatives used for animals. The trick was figuring out what and how much to use to knock out Tammy so that Paul could sexually assault her.
Goodness.
Eventually, she decided on using halothane, an anesthetic which animals inhale before surgery.
Okay.
That evening, while Homolka's parents and younger sister Lori slept, Homolka and Bernardo drugged the youngest sister, 15-year-old Tammy Lynn, so Bernardo could rape her.
Wow. She's 15?
She's 15.
Ooh-wee.
She had really thought this thing with Tammy through. And this is a quote. After all, she did not want to kill her own sister. She just wanted to knock her out and give her to Paul for Christmas.
Like as a gift?
Yes.
What?
Yeah. This is December 23rd. So it's the night before Christmas Eve.
Wait, no, but okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I have no faith in humanity anymore.
no, literally. I know. It's
Zero. I just like dogs. That's it.
I warned JT before this because there are certain elements of true crime where JT gets uneasy about, which is fair because I feel like we all have our limit of what we like to.
There's a very specific limit for me. Everything else is game. Yeah. But it's kids.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, JT, you're going to have a hard time with this one.
Yeah.
Oh, it only gets worse, Fabs.
Yeah. Like my Sister's Keeper was like the worst documentary I've ever watched. I mean, it's a great documentary. It's horrible. And I barely could finish it. I just wanted to see Father Maskell die. Anyway.
Yeah. So Paul used his new video camcorder to take videos of Mr. and Mrs. Homolka, their daughters, Karla, Tammy, and Lori, and the Christmas decorations in the house before committing this crime. And so Paul applied Tammy with drinks laced with sedative, halcyon, and the effects of the drugs and alcohol were swift, and Tammy was out cold on the couch in no time.
Wow. So real fast, nothing to do with that except other than halcyon. When I had brain surgery, they went up through my nose It was just a pituitary tumor. It was in 2020, and everything's fine. Tumor's gone, and it wasn't cancer or anything like that. But they gave me Halcyon before putting me out, and I remember feeling like it was the greatest feeling of all time. It was just tickles in your tummy and just happiness, and I was like not scared of the surgery at all. So I will say, when it comes to her and like ingesting Halcyon and all of that, I mean, I would have said I would have just been completely out, and definitely so is she. That's crazy.
Absolutely. And so when the other members of the household went to bed, Karla and Paul started to work on Tammy. Paul held the camera on Tammy while he raped her.
How'd you phrase it like that?
I know.
Yeah, okay.
I know. Paul held the camera on Tammy while he raped her, leaving Karla to keep the halothane-laden rag over her sister's face to keep her out.
Say Halcyon or halothane?
Both.
Oh,
so
okay.
they gave her Halcyon.
Got it.
And then they used halothane over her because, remember, Karla knew this from working at the veterinary clinic that's what they give animals to inhale before surgery. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, what's that other one where you put it on a rag and put it over people's mouths?
Yeah. It's the.
I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, I'm sure. One of the pair junkies might know.
Yeah. But anywho, kind of similar in that way. But anyways, so then he ordered Karla to make sexual advances to her sleeping sister. Suddenly, Tammy threw up. Karla wished her sister hadn't eaten before this event, but Karla knew what to do. She did what they did in the veterinary clinic. She held her sister upside down to try to clear her throat.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Okay.
And early in the morning of December 24th, Tammy was still unconscious, vomited, and stopped breathing.
Wow. Okay.
So Bernardo and Homolka dressed Tammy and carried her to her bedroom. They cleaned up the crime scene, hid the video cassette, and called the 911 emergency number.
So it wasn't, this first murder was like kind of an accident, and not an accident, but
yeah. So I think
like they didn't mean to kill her.
I don't think they meant to kill her, but
I don't know about all that.
Yeah.
You said she choked on her
vomit.
On her vomit.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. All right. Oh, thank you, Lindsay. Snow also said it. Chloroform.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fab said, Halcyon's a very happy high. I work at a surgery center, by the way, not a druggie.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. It's the whole thing's pretty gnarly, and it only gets worse from here. So,
okay.
Yeah. So they called 911, and an ambulance took Tammy to St. Catherine's General Hospital, where she was pronounced dead.
Wow.
Niagara Regional Police questioned Bernardo and Homolka, particularly about an unusual burn mark on Tammy's face.
Wow.
They accepted Bernardo's explanation that it was a carpet burn Tammy had sustained when he dragged her to the bedroom. The burn had actually been caused by the halothane administered to Tammy on a cloth pressed on her face.
Got it.
Doctors concluded that Tammy had choked to death on vomit after overindulging in alcohol. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So that was the first murder and sexual assault.
So there's nothing that's saying that they meant to full blown murder her.
Right.
It's like, because I'm having trouble already, just knowing they're both psychopaths. I'm having trouble thinking they didn't do this and then they
I think so. What was it that we were watching, Jay, where they were saying, it was the film we watched last night, where he said that he didn't mean to kill his girlfriend in that car accident, but when he watched her die, it triggered something in his brain.
Don't move.
Yeah, don't
move. Yeah.
It felt very similar in that way. Like, they didn't mean to kill her, but then they were like, that actually felt kind of good. And then they continued to do it. So
sure. They would have got there either way, but I understand. I understand what you mean.
That's the vibe I've gotten from it. But
okay.
Yeah. So our next one is just a woman referred to as Jane. Mm-hmm. So Karla was obsessed with Paul's happiness. And her greatest fear was that she would not be able to hold on to this wild man who was supposed to become her husband. When he would become bored or distracted, she would either do something to excite him or find another person for him to get excited about. So Paul harped continually that Tammy was no longer available to him for his sexual pleasure and blamed Karla for causing her death. Yeah. And so,
What?
yeah.
What do you mean, what, JT? No, he's psychologically manipulative. That's what these people do. So, yeah, okay, heard.
Exactly. So Karla searched for a replacement for Tammy, someone who was young and virginal. Karla knew just the right person, a teenager who was referred to as Jane, who looked very much like Karla's dead sister, Tammy. Jane would become Karla's wedding gift to Paul.
Oh, my God, stop gifting people. What the...
Yeah.
Okay.
So Jane idolized Karla because she thought that she was beautiful, sophisticated, and was kind of a role model for her, and gratefully accepted Karla's invitation to the Bernardo's new home they rented at 57 Bayview Street. The first evening, Karla took Jane to dinner and spent hours talking to her and plying her with alcoholic drinks laced with halcyon tablets. Jane passed out and slept deeply. Once Jane was soundly asleep, Karla called Paul over for his gift. He was excited when he saw how much Jane resembled Tammy. He was a bit concerned that Karla was using the same drug that killed Tammy to subdue Jane, but Karla convinced him that she was in control of the situation this time. Once they undressed Jane, Paul videotaped Karla as she made sexual advances to the sleeping girl. Then Paul took her virginity. After videotaping that, he moved on to his alleged favorite act of a brutal kind of anal sex.
Oof. Okay.
Fortunate.
So they're filming every single one of
They're
these.
filming everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got to add to the brutality and the motive.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Because they treated these girls like objects.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and not in just the way of like how it standardly is when people commit these kinds of crimes, you're already treating somebody like an object. This is taking it to the next level.
Anytime
in my
you
opinion.
gift somebody,
right?
you're treating them like an object.
Which is like such a weird thing. Like, how did you get to your point in your relationship where you're like, I'm going to gift my man, say, another young girl? Like, that is so fucking, excuse me. It's so creepy.
You can say that. This is a rated R podcast. I put explicit on this.
Oh, good. Yeah. That one just like gets me riled, if you will, because it's disgusting for sure. Yeah. But
Fabs said I jumped in the live late. What year was this? 1990. Right?
Yeah, this one was 1990. Yeah. So, yes. Fortunately for Jane, she was so drugged that she did not wake up during the whole disgusting ordeal, which is great. But Karla was left to clean the blood off the 15-year-old girl and put her to bed for the night. The next morning, Jane, who was very sick to her stomach and understandably sore, met Paul, she thought, for the first time. And so she had no idea what had really happened to her. While Paul seemed very grateful for the gift of Jane's virginity and was continually amazed at the things Karla would do for him, he was having second thoughts about marrying her.
I don't even. I like to think that I could get into that type of like psychology, but no. I don't even know how to even respond to that.
Exactly.
Like okay. Maybe nothing will ever be enough for him.
I don't think there is anything that could truly
be enough.
Him.
I think he's just an animal, and he just needs to keep going and going and going and going. You know, and there needs to be new things constantly, or he's just going to immediately get bored.
Well, exactly, and I think that's what Karla's mindset was at the when she did this. She wanted him for some reason. And she was willing to do anything for him, which is disturbing. But anyways, going back, we're going to put a pin in that real quick, and we're going to jump back to the Scarborough Rapist stuff real quick.
Also, you like swim? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I thought that I'm not gonna lie, I was a little disappointed that I didn't get enough of understanding that part of him beforehand. But now I see what you did.
Yes.
I should just trust her.
Yeah.
I should just trust her. That's why I married her.
So Karla and Paul became sexually obsessed with each other almost immediately. Unlike the other girls he knew, she encouraged his sadistic sexual behavior. A quote said, Karla, handcuffed and on her knees and begging for him, was scratching an itch. Paul asked her what she would think if he was a rapist. She said she would think it was cool. Their love deepened. And he started raping women in earnest.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, skipping around. And
Interesting. Yeah, Snow said, from one to wicked, he is wicked. It's true.
exactly. So basically, after that woman, so Karla knew about all of these encounters and she kept it a secret. And so she kind of helped in the way of keeping Paul out of that limelight, which is why they ended up moving to St. Catharines to live with her parents, to keep him away from the police, essentially, because they were kind of catching on to him, especially after that woman came forward and said, that looks like Paul. That was when they decided to move.
Gotcha.
And to finish up with what we were saying with the Scarborough Rapist, the police discounted the memory that the woman had, where she was saying that essentially she remembered seeing a woman with the rapist with what appeared to be a video camera in her hand. And the police said that it was chalked up to hysteria on the part of the woman who was raped.
Okay.
So that was the first time as well that Karla got associated with the crimes.
Okay.
And so the whole time that they're murdering people, basically the Scarborough Rapist investigation is still going on.
Yeah.
So wanted to include that point as well. But yeah, the next crime that they ended up committing was with Leslie Mahaffy.
Okay.
And so Paul had begun augmenting his income by smuggling cigarettes across the border.
So wait, 1 second. They didn't kill Jane?
So we'll talk more about Jane a little bit later.
Okay.
But
Okay. Leslie.
yeah, so Paul had begun augmenting his income by smuggling cigarettes across the border because I guess cigarettes were illegal in Canada at the time.
What?
Yeah. And
What?
so, yeah, and needed stolen license plates to disguise his frequent visits across the American-Canadian line. And it was the need for a stolen license plate that brought him into contact with his murder victim, Leslie Mahaffy. Leslie Mahaffy was a troubled teen. Her strong, independent personality seemed to be at the root of the problem, which manifested itself into ignoring her curfews, skipping school, and shoplifting. Her parents responded by getting tough on Leslie when she broke the rules. But on Friday, June 14th, 1991, Leslie went out for the evening with her friends and stayed out well past her curfew. At 2 a.m., she found herself locked out of her house, and she called her friend to ask her if she could spend the night with her. But the friend didn't think that her mother would allow it at that hour. Leslie told her friend that she was going back home to wake up her parents. Leslie had actually gone back to her home to see if there was any way to get in without waking her parents. With the worst possible luck imaginable, she encountered Paul Bernardo, who was prowling around the neighborhood looking for license plates to steal. He pulled a knife on Leslie Mahaffy and forced her to go into his car.
What's the point of stealing a license plate?
Because he needed to cover his license plate because he was going through the American-Canadian border so much
Gotcha.
that he didn't want to catch any kind of, attention in that way. Marlboro Red and Camels were hot commodities, apparently.
Yeah.
But yeah, he pulled a knife on Leslie Mahaffy and forced her to go into his car. Paul took his victim home. While Karla slept, he began to videotape the 14-year-old Leslie naked and blindfolded. When Karla woke up, she was very angry that Paul had used their best champagne glasses to entertain his new toy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Finally, Karla came around and started being the obedient wife that Paul demanded. Paul gave Karla elaborate instructions on how to make love to Leslie. That was his term for it. And it was important. It was the voice of a director in an important film. Every moment had to be just perfect for the videotape he was making.
This sounds kind of like American Psycho.
It does. No, it really does, Jay.
Sounds kind of like American Psycho. I wonder if they.
It was.
Wonder if they. Yeah. Was it? I don't know which one came first though. The novel or the. Anyway, I don't know.
But we could look it up.
We'll look it up.
After the prelude with Karla, Paul went in for the rough stuff, if you will, while his wife held the camera. The brute force of his penetration in her anal region escalated, and Leslie died.
Oh my gosh! From that?
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
From that?
Yes.
Okay.
And mind you,
boy, that's brutal.
And mind you, he had done this without Karla helping at the beginning, so I highly doubt he used any kind of drugs on her because Karla wasn't there.
Jeez.
At the beginning.
Yeah. So they're sure that that's how she died?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What? Okay.
So then on February 1st, 1991, Bernardo and Homolka moved into a bungalow in Port Dalhousie, Ontario, and they were married in Niagara-on-the-Lake on June 29th. Paul had carefully controlled every detail of the wedding, from Karla's money, her dress that she spent $2,000 on, to her hairstyle, to the menu, to the inclusion of love, honor, and obey in Karla's wedding vows. He would not allow the minister to pronounce them husband and wife. It had to be man and wife. Because he didn't want Karla to be seen as equal.
As equal?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
He is... How do you even tolerate him?
I know.
Goodness gracious.
So that same day, boaters and fishermen at Lake Gibson, south of St. Catharines, discovered concrete blocks that had encased human arms, legs, feet, and a head.
Wait, where? What?
In Lake Gibson.
In Lake Gibson?
Which is south of St. Catharines.
Okay.
They found concrete blocks that encased human arms, legs, feet, and a head.
Is it his victims?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
Whoa. The next day, another man found a human torso floating in the water. The remains were later identified as those of Leslie Mahaffy, 14, of Burlington, Ontario.
Got it. So it was one person. It wasn't a bunch of people. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So it was one person.
Yes.
It was Leslie. Jim said that the novel was published in 1991.
So I wonder... Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That is...
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know what kind of connection that might have.
There might not be any connection.
But still.
Yeah.
So her parents had... so the remains were found on June 29th, but her parents had reported her missing on June 15th. So, and mind you, the remains were found the same day as their wedding.
Okay.
So ain't that some luck for Paul? But anyways, so while police undertook the investigation of the Mahaffy murder, Paul and Karla Bernardo were honeymooning in Hawaii. Mm-hmm. Police searching for clues to Mahaffy's killer were unaware of evidence that would connect the crime to the Scarborough Rapist crimes.
I really would like, honestly, I'm very interested to see what their dynamic is on a regular Tuesday.
Right?
Like what is, I'm kind of picturing this like control freak and this woman who is like obsessed with him for some reason. And I just kind of wanted, I'm so interested to know like the true dynamic of that, you know?
Right.
Like, because I feel like when we talk about these things, we're seeing them from such an exterior view that it's like we could never, unless we were there and watching it constantly, we could never truly understand the fully the relationship between these two.
Right.
You know, I think that's what makes this case just so unimaginable, is that it can't be imagined.
Exactly. And Lindsay said their behavior at this point is beginning to escalate tenfold, and the psychology of them individually as well as their relationship needs to be majorly studied.
Yeah,
I completely agree.
I'm sure they are, like, someone studies it or has studied it. But again, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and Mylea said she sounds very codependent. Like, why is she trying to so hard to hold on to a man like that?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
Lindsay and Miley are right. Like, that's crazy.
I completely agree. But meanwhile, while all of these other investigations are going on, Tammy Homolka's death wasn't under criminal investigation at all. And almost a year later, in April 1992, Niagara Regional Police sought help for the American Federal Bureau of Investigation. An FBI group of criminal profiling experts produced a psychological portrait of the murderer as a sexual predator who would probably kill again.
Yeah.
So going back to Jane. So Paul, deprived of his eccentric entertainment, was prone to ill humor. This simply would not do. Karla, the ever dutiful wife, called Jane back into service, if you will.
Okay.
But Jane was far from the ideal sex slave. First of all, the girl upset both of them both by refusing to let Paul have intercourse with her. Jane thought she was still a virgin.
Okay.
And so oral sex was all she would agree to. Then she told her writing instructor about Paul, and the instructor told Jane's mother.
Wow.
The result was that Paul and Karla had less opportunity to enjoy themselves with Jane. One night, things got out of hand again with the halothane, and Jane stopped breathing for a while.
Oh, boy. Like, what's a while?
So they didn't specify.
Oh, okay.
But this scared Paul and Karla. Not only that, Paul was becoming annoyed with his new wife. He questioned her competence with the halothane, and Karla became frantic. She felt she had to do something to put some new romance back into their relationship.
Okay.
So we'll come back to Jane.
Okay. Gotcha. So they don't want her to die.
Yeah, so they don't want Jane to die because they've been using her as a sex slave, basically. Okay. And she was, to a degree, consenting in the way of what she thought. She didn't know all the pieces.
Yeah.
So she was agreeing to do some sexual acts with them, but she was still underage, so there isn't really any kind of consent that can be given lawfully.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
So nonetheless, the next one is the murder of Kristen French. And on April 16th, 1992, a very popular and attractive teenager named Kristen French was abducted from a church parking lot. Karla had lured the girl over to their car on the pretense of asking directions. When Kristen stood by the car looking at Karla's map, Paul forced the girl into the backseat with his knife.
So she's kidnapped too.
Mm-hmm. At the outset, both Paul and Karla knew that Kristen would have to die. She had clearly seen them, knew where they lived, and had seen their dog.
Okay.
So even so, they didn't want Kristen to figure this out, particularly since she was bigger than Karla was and fairly strong despite her youth. Kristen, who was a smart girl, did everything she could to cooperate with this depraved couple and their outrageous and humiliating demands. She believed that cooperation was her only chance for survival. The ordeal became worse and worse. The more she cooperated, the more sadistic Paul became. The following activity was found in Williams's book, which was a book written about this particular case, and was taken from the videotaped evidence. So the quote is, and I'm going to do a trigger warning for this one because this is incredibly graphic and vulgar. So just a heads up if you are not comfortable listening to that sort of language and also sexual content, just skip forward a little bit. But basically the quote goes, "I'm going to piss on you, okay? Then I'm going to shit on you," Paul said in a whisper. Kristen did not move, even when he slapped her face with his semi-erect penis. "Don't make me mad. Don't make me hurt you," he said. urging her to smile when he rubbed his groin into her face. "Don't worry, I won't piss in your face." Finally, he stood over her and urinated, then he moved. Turning his buttocks into her face, he squatted over her face and tried to defecate on her without success. "You're a fucking piece of shit, but I like you," he told her. "You look good covered in piss." So that just tells you exactly what kind of human being.
He's not a human being.
Exactly.
That's not human.
It's not. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
And
Lord
it's
Jesus.
Yeah. So the indignities went on for a day or two, all meticulously captured on video for the enjoyment of Karla and Paul. Then came the final and worst indignity of all for Kristen French, but her death was not captured on film. So April 30th, 1992, a female body was found in a ditch along a rural road in the north end of Burlington. The face was battered and the hair had been shaved from the head, but an old injury, the missing tip of the left pinky finger, immediately told investigators that the corpse was that of Kristen French, 15 of St. Catharines.
Okay. So she's been missing that part. Okay, got it.
So
Okay.
French's parents had reported her missing on April 16th. A shoe identified as hers was found in the parking lot of Grace Lutheran Church, which she passed by every day going to and from school. Then a witness reported seeing a scuffle in that parking lot on the afternoon of the 16th. It had appeared to the witness that two people were forcing a girl into a car she described as a cream-colored Chevrolet Camaro. Police searched the parking lot and found a torn fragment of a map of Scarborough and a lock of brown hair. They began an exhaustive check of cream-colored Camaros, following what turned out to be a mistaken lead. Bernardo's car was a gold-colored Nissan.
Okay.
So later, after Kristen French was abducted, a woman remembered seeing a struggle going on in a car at the scene. While she was not familiar with various makes of cars, she thought it was a Camaro. Vince Bevin focused on tracking the ownership of all the Camaros in the region. Meanwhile, Bernardo's name surfaced once again from one of the many tips that police received. Two policemen called on Paul at his 57 Bayview home. Paul was very gracious and polite during the interview and admitted that he had been a suspect in the Scarborough Rapist case because of his facial similarities to the composite picture. The police noted that Paul was very clean-cut and good-looking, that he was intelligent and cooperative, and that his home was very clean and orderly. They also noted that he drove a Nissan, which looked nothing like a Camaro. Police looked for the car. Nevertheless, the two policemen tried to contact Detective Steve Irwin in Toronto to ask about the results of the inquiry into the Scarborough Rapist case. 8 days later, Irwin responded to the message and explained that final testing of Bernardo's blood and saliva samples had not been done. Thus, technically, Bernardo had not been cleared as a suspect. Irwin sent the task force some information, but neglected to send results of the interviews with friends of Paul who had tipped off the police about him. A woman's report that Bernardo was stalking her, and the police reports filed by his former girlfriend, Jennifer. Consequently, Bernardo was not pursued as a suspect.
Okay.
Like, the police kept fumbling.
They keep missing him.
Yeah.
That's crazy. They keep missing him.
And so, incredibly enough, in February of 1993, several years after blood samples had been taken from Paul Bernardo, the forensic laboratory in Toronto finally got around to analyzing his blood. The test provided conclusively that Bernardo had raped the three female victims from whom they had semen samples.
Okay.
Had the laboratory been speedier, Paul Bernardo would have been in jail instead of raping more women and murdering several school-age girls. Detective Irwin put Bernardo under surveillance. What he learned was that Bernardo had just been charged with assault in St. Catharines. The assault charges had been filed by his wife, Karla.
Mm-hmm. What?
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
So she filed charges against him.
Right.
Ooh.
And I also, so, you know,
why?
Exactly. And so,
why?
does Jane know any of the things that the couple were doing? Because the way I would have been on the phone with police quicker than I can dial the number. So she was underage, and I think that adds into the part of things where, you know, when you're being abused as a child, sometimes you don't want to have, you feel embarrassed by the acts that are being done to you. And sometimes children don't speak up because of that. But I was actually just about to bring up Jane because when Karla filed the charges against Paul, Karla officially released Jane.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they had...
Like from her sex slave imprisonment?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So, yeah, so technically Jane was a survivor. And so all of the interviews, the reason why she's referred to as Jane is because all interviews that she has done has been under anonymity.
Got it.
Because I think she doesn't really want to. Like, she wants the information to be out there, but isn't...
But yeah, of course.
...open to having her identity attached to it, which is fair. But anyways, so... Acting on a tip that Bernardo had a penchant for violence and aggressive sex, police interviewed him on May 12th and was once again dismissed him as a prime suspect in what were now being called the 2 schoolgirl murders of Southern Ontario. Mahaffy's remains were exhumed and medical examiners found bruises on the back that had similarities to the blunt force injuries on Kristen French's body. For the first time, police connected the 2 murders. Niagara Regional Police, working with the Halton Regional Police, established a special task force to conduct the investigation into the 2 crimes. On July 21st, a reenactment of French's abduction was shown on TV. It generated thousands of tips, but no substantial leads.
Okay.
Then on January 6, 1993, Karla Homolka was admitted to St. Catherine General Hospital after Bernardo beat her viciously with a flashlight.
Wow. Wow.
He was arrested and charged with assault with a weapon and then released on bail.
Okay.
Homolka never returned to the couple's home in Port Dalhousie.
Okay.
A month later, the Center of Forensic Sciences finally matched Bernardo's DNA with that of the Scarborough Rapist.
This is probably when DNA testing was
So it was
new.
I don't know if you caught that bit towards the beginning, but basically their forensic analysis team was one scientist and one expert, essentially.
Yeah.
So they literally had 2 people working on that, and they had over 50,000 samples to sort through.
Goodness.
So that was a part of why
it took so long.
Yeah.
Okay.
So because of that, though, the Center of Forensic Sciences finally matched Bernardo's DNA with that of the Scarborough Rapist samples. Police put Bernardo under surveillance and tapped his phone. So now we're getting into Karla's plea bargain.
Okay.
So Homolka was initially uncooperative with police. After consulting with her lawyer, she said she would testify against Bernardo on the condition of being granted immunity from prosecution.
Okay.
The Attorney General for Ontario would not agree to immunity, but was willing to consider a reduced sentence. So on February 17th, Bernardo was arrested for the murders of Mahaffy and French and the Scarborough rapes. So, and this is in 1993. So, police subjected Homolka to 4 days of interrogation. She blamed Bernardo for her sister's death. She described how Bernardo had kidnapped Mahaffy from the yard of the girl's home and how she and Bernardo had lured French to their car in the parking lot. She said both girls were used as sex slaves before Bernardo strangled them to death. French had been made to watch a television news broadcast of her father's emotional plea for her safe return.
He's like one of those serial killers that like to keep him alive
to
suffer both physically and mentally. You know what I mean?
Seriously.
There are some serial killers that just do them in, right?
Exactly.
But there's some that are just truly wicked that just want to keep the suffering going for as long as they can.
Possible,
Like in the
yeah.
last episode with Alcala or whatever, however the hell you say his name, with him like bringing the women back to life, after strangling them and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah. But this is next level.
It is.
This
It's next level. And so, basically, after he forced French to watch that television broadcast, Homolka claimed Bernardo had boasted to her of raping at least 30 women. Homolka described herself as a battered wife, which I think is comical. I mean, obviously he did beat her, but like that's kind of disgusting that she is trying to play the victim here.
Well, it's disgusting, but it's also, of course she is, because she wants to, she doesn't want to go to prison for the rest of her life.
Right.
Yeah.
So Homolka described herself as a battered wife who was forced to participate in Bernardo's crimes and who lived in terror of him. A search of their home turned up a list of the Scarborough rapes, books of a deviant sexual nature, a hunting knife, handcuffs, and a videotape of Homolka and Bernardo engaged in sexual activity with unidentified young women. Homolka was clearly a willing participant in both encounters. She admitted to the police that one of the girls had been drugged and was later unaware that she had been raped. So, on July 6, 1993, a part of the plea bargain with prosecutors, Homolka was convicted after pleading guilty to 2 counts of manslaughter in the Mahaffy and French murders. She was sentenced to 2 12-year prison terms to be served concurrently. Authorities weren't aware at the time that the initial police search of the Bernardo residence had missed a bundle of videotapes. Tapes that would prove to be the most damning and publicly explosive evidence of the case. On May 6, 1993, Bernardo's lawyer had retrieved 6 8mm tapes that had been hidden in the Bernardo home. They were not turned over to the police until September 22nd, 1994.
Wow.
The tapes showed in graphic detail the rape of Tammy Homolka and the torture and rapes of Mahaffy and French. Homolka appeared as Bernardo's consenting accomplice, not at all as a frightened forced participant. By this time, the case was dominating headlines and capturing the attention of people across North America. News of the tapes prompted public outrage, and the media accused the prosecution of making a deal with the devil and giving Homolka only a 12-year sentence for her role in the crimes. However, the Crown said it was obliged to stand by its agreement. So, on to Paul Bernardo's trial. The trial of Paul Bernardo was delayed for 2 years after his arrest.
Do they have the death penalty in Canada?
I don't think they do.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah. But one of the reasons for the delay was that Bernardo had placed his first lawyer, Ken Murray, in a very difficult ethical situation. Bernardo had given Murray the videotapes that he and Karla had made of their adventures, believing that by doing so, they would never get into the hands of prosecutors. However, the prosecutors knew of the videotapes from Karla and had wiretapped Murray's conversations with Bernardo. Eventually, the pressure increased and Murray had to do something about the videotapes in his possession. The videotapes were turned over to the prosecutors and Murray withdrew from the case. Veteran defense lawyer John Rosen took his place as Bernardo's lawyer. This series of activities alone caused a delay of 1 year in the start of the trial. In May of 1995, Bernardo's trial began in Judge Patrick Lesage's courtroom with the videotapes as critical pieces of evidence. Bernardo faced 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of aggravated sexual assault, 2 counts of forcible confinement, 2 counts of kidnapping, and 1 count of performing an indignity on a human body. For 2 years, information about the case had been sealed, although sordid details had leaked out in the American press. Copies of newspapers were smuggled into Canada. Prosecutor Ray Houlihan opened the trial with a full-day story of Karla's life as a victim of the dominating sadist, a brainwashed, frightened accomplice to the most degrading criminal acts. Crown prosecutor Ray Houlihan began with a segment showing Karla naked, masturbating with the camera focused on her vagina. Nick Prawn in Lethal Marriage describes the effect of the video that what it had on the courtroom. He says gasps of surprise and disgust, perhaps even shock, along with plenty of embarrassed giggles, could be heard throughout the courtroom as the camera lingered on Homolka's exposed body for several minutes as she stimulated herself. For the previous 2 years, ever since her arrest, Homolka's face had been almost as well known as the Prime Minister's.
Wow.
She had been seen on television in footage taken at her wedding with her friends and at trial. But few people in the courtroom that day were expecting to see a XXX rated tape, a close study of the country's most infamous woman in a variety of sexually explicit positions. As more of these videotapes of Leslie, Kristen, and Jane were shown, the jury was provided with indisputable and powerful evidence of Paul Bernardo's sexual depravity. As if that were not enough, Karla was called to the stand to elaborate on what the jurors had just seen and heard. What she described in her relationship with Paul was an escalating theme of sexual degradation, similar to what Paul had begun with other girlfriends before he met Karla. In Karla, the willing victim, the degradation knew no boundaries. He made her wear a dog's choke collar. He inserted a wine bottle into her vagina. He almost strangled her to death with a wire cord to satisfy his sadistic fantasies.
Wow.
Paul told her that his choke fantasy was, in quote, important to him and it wouldn't hurt anybody. He told her that she was nothing without him and he would call her names like slut, bitch, and cunt. When the defense had its turn in the courtroom, John Rosen attacked Karla's credibility. His goal was to show that she was not the victim she portrayed herself to be, but a willing participant in the couple's rape and murder spree.
Yeah.
Which I agree with, personally.
I agree with that, too. I mean, there's no doubt that he didn't abuse her or anything. Like, he definitely abused her, but she was a willing participant in a lot of this.
And Lindsay said she's just as much of an abuser as he is. Just because she may have had different motives or whatever, then Paul doesn't excuse the horrible acts she was willingly performing at every step.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
You know, and that's exactly why I'm like, I feel like she should have gotten longer in prison.
Yeah.
But,
God.
you know.
So she's out and alive right now? Bruh.
Yeah, I know.
No.
I know.
Oh, my gosh.
And
oh, my gosh. She ain't dead?
Nope.
Oh, Lord Jesus.
Somehow.
Lord Jesus. It's a fire.
He was at least, though, successful in showing Karla to be morally vacuous and that she had no remorse for her part in these crimes. Mm-hmm. In particular, Kristen's murder had to be committed at a particular time so that Karla and Paul could spend Easter dinner with Karla's parents. Okay. Could you imagine?
Yeah. I know.
Being in that room,
you
know? And so immediately after Kristen was strangled, Karla left to blow dry her hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. She had no remorse.
No. Zero remorse.
She's not a victim in this case.
No.
So it was not immediately clear at the trial. It became clear shortly after that Karla had cleverly manipulated the circumstances of her cooperation with the government to engineer one of the worst deals that the Canadian government had ever made with a criminal witness.
It's true. Mm-hmm. That's insane.
It really is.
That's insane.
Regardless of Karla's degree of guilt or innocence and the deal she had made with the authorities, it did not save Bernardo from the outrage that he kindled in the minds of the jurors. Mm-hmm. On September 1st, 1995, Bernardo was convicted on all of the charges against him regarding the kidnappings, rapes, and murders of Leslie Mahaffy and Kristen French.
Good.
He also faced trials in the death of Tammy Homolka and the serial rapes in Scarborough. Under Canadian law, Bernardo can apply for parole after 25 years in prison, although it is unlikely that he would be successful in any parole bid The trial lasted 4 months, during which Homolka spent 17 court days in the witness box.
Yeah, you don't let an animal out like that.
Oh,
you
absolutely
just don't.
not.
You just don't.
And so...
You know, I can't even call him an animal. Animals are cute.
It's true.
He's trash.
No, he's just a demon, honestly.
But demons are kind of cool sometimes. No, he's trash.
Yeah, garbage.
Garbage.
So... Bernardo, like I said, was found guilty on all of those charges, and he was sentenced to life imprisonment and declared a dangerous offender, making parole highly unlikely. 5 years later, in 2000, both the Ontario Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court of Canada turned down Bernardo's efforts to appeal his murder convictions. In 2006, Bernardo's lawyer said his client had confessed in 2005 to 10 additional sexual assaults. Since 2013, he has been incarcerated at the Millhaven Maximum Security Prison in Bath, Ontario.
Okay, Bath, Ontario.
Mm-hmm. And so a little bit on the aftermath of all of this. The Bernardo Homolka crimes, apart from their impact on the victims and their families, had a wide-ranging impact long after the trials concluded. The videotapes showing the rape and murder of their victims were ordered to be destroyed by an Ontario court.
Wow. So they don't exist.
They don't exist anymore.
Okay.
Bernardo's lawyer, Ken Murray, who initially retrieved the tapes from their hiding place in the Bernardo home, was charged in 1997 with obstruction of justice and conspiracy to obstruct justice for failing to turn the tapes over to police. Murray was acquitted of those charges in 2000. In 1996, a government inquiry into the investigation of Bernardo found that police had made numerous mistakes, that rivalries among police agencies had further harmed the investigation, and that some of Bernardo's crimes might have been prevented if his DNA sample had been processed and matched more quickly. Karla Homolka served her full 12-year sentence and was released from prison in 2005 under the series of judge-imposed conditions, including restrictions on her movement and a ban of any contact with anyone under the age of 16.
Yeah, and she didn't get changed. She didn't get changed her name, right?
No,
because she's got to live with that scarlet letter, bro. Mm-hmm. Jeez.
Those conditions were overturned, though, by another judge only months later, prompting criticism from the Mahaffy and French families. Homolka settled in Montreal, where she gave birth to a son in 2007.
Huh?
Yeah.
She gave birth to a child? She produced a human?
She produced a human. Right. And that is what's so jarring, too, is that anybody out there would be willing...
That poor child.
I know. I don't know how they wouldn't take custody.
They have to take custody.
Yeah,
they have to.
Because
can't she not be around young people?
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing: is those conditions were overturned by another judge.
Yeah. Those overturned. So stupid.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Oh.
Homolka then lived on the Caribbean island of Guadeloupe under the name Leanne Bordelais, along with her new husband, Thierry, brother of her prison lawyer, Sylvie Bordelais, and her then 3 children. She had more children.
What? Yeah. She produced more humans?
With her lawyer's brother.
What?
Yeah.
This is nuts.
I know.
This is nuts. That's nuts. How does she get to live life, bro?
Because she doesn't live in the country anymore.
Because she ain't did this shit in Georgia. That's why.
Exactly.
We'd put her ass down.
Anyways, yeah, it's true. And in 2012, after being discovered in Guadeloupe by a Canadian journalist, Homolka returned to Quebec. Phew. Paul Bernardo became eligible for day parole in 2015 and full parole in February 2018 after having served 25 years in prison.
If you tell me he's out, bro.
However, in October 2018, his application for both day and full parole
were denied.
Correct.
Okay.
By a panel of the Parole Board of Canada.
You cannot let that out. You cannot let that out.
And it only took them 30 minutes of deliberation to do so.
30 minutes?
Yeah.
More like 30 seconds. Say just no.
As a dangerous offender, Bernardo will likely never be released.
Yeah. Good.
So,
Yeah.
That is... I'll let you digest that for a second.
No, I know. So
I feel
what's
like,
body count? What's the official body count?
So technically, the official body count is 4.
4.
But, 3 murdered, 1 not murdered. Mm-hmm. But there are
multiple
sexual assault victims up to 10.
Up to 10. So we're talking 14, 15.
So that he confessed to.
Yeah.
There could be more.
I'm still got my number.
Yeah. I feel like they deserve separate ratings.
So I thought that, but I didn't want to make it too convoluted, right?
Right.
Like we're already kind of breaking it down in separate, like, stages and whatnot. I think that we can put it all together. So for me, Madison, while you go ahead and write your numbers down,
yeah.
I'll go ahead and I'll go first. Brutality, hands down, a 10. 10.
100%.
All day. I mean, let's go through it. They filmed it. The death by anal sex was just
vile.
That's the most vile thing I could think of. Just keeping these women as sex slaves and alive and destroying them psychologically by making them watch their dad cry about them. That's just another type. That's another level of wicked. Mm-hmm. You have serial killers that are wicked, but then you have serial killers that can only be described as just full blown, just the most evil thing you can think of, and that's freaking evil. I mean, all serial killers are evil, but you know what I mean. All right, premeditation. I gave it a 7, and mainly because what got them up to the 7 is the gifting of people, especially from her, like mm-hmm. the gifting of people and objectifying them. That's you have to be thinking, I am gonna get my husband a gift, and that is a person. So that is for sure premeditated, and then the kidnapping, obviously premeditated. So it's gonna be as high as around a 7, 8. With the motive. Obviously filming it and keeping those films, he wants to be able to relive it, or they want to be able to relive it. Self-pleasure and control, and for her to please her husband, all motive. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give that a 7 also. And the difficulty is where they lost me. Yeah. The difficulty of investigation. They were sloppy. I wrote down. So I'm giving it a 4. I'm giving difficulty a 4. He wouldn't have got away with it today.
No,
with that amount of sloppiness.
He would have been caught eventually because he's still alive right now.
Yeah.
So it's like they would have figured that out. Somebody would have opened a cold case and would have immediately gotten him. Exactly.
And even back then, the only reason they got away with as much as they did is the police were sloppy.
Yeah.
So difficulty of investigation, that's a 4 for me. And body count is a 7 because of the amount of victims and, both murdered and just sexually assaulted. So, I kind of wrote down as I was listening to this, the 2 words, a perfect storm, not a perfect storm, but perfect storm. Because you have a man who is an absolute piece of garbage. I mean, just full blown trash. Can't even call him
Scum
a human being.
Earth.
Scum. And you have this woman who wants to do everything to please him and will do anything to please him. Mm-hmm. And he's...
A man ain't worth it.
Nothing's worth that.
No.
Yeah, that's insane. So, it was just kind of like a perfect storm with the police being so sloppy mm-hmm. and then Barbie needing her Ken and Ken using his Barbie mm-hmm. and playing with her like a doll. Anyway.
So I also gave brutality a 10 just because exactly like what you said, the actual murders and the abuse that they cause these young girls mm-hmm. is depraved. And it is just so brutal that I don't think there's anything you could give that less, in my opinion. Premeditation, I did give them an 8 because of exactly what you said with the gifting people, but also that they targeted underage girls.
1 second. Y'all go ahead and also submit your number so I can add it to the average.
To the total.
Yeah, just submit your overall number. Everyone in the live stream, submit your overall number.
Yes. And so I gave for the that because of the gifting of people and also targeting of underage girls specifically.
Yep.
So, and then for motive, I gave an 8.5 because of the fact that it was all self-centered, as pretty much every single crime is. It's self-centered.
Yep.
And it was for just a lustful disregard of human beings and human life. That's a pretty vicious motive, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And also that they, again, targeted underage children. And those children, had they even lived through that, would have not been able to live a solid life, you know?
Exactly.
For the most part. And then...
Poor Jane.
I agree. And then for difficulty, I gave it a 5 because, like JT said, they were sloppy. They videotaped it. Those videotapes would have been found eventually. It makes sense that they were caught. And honestly, shame on the police for not having caught them sooner. Because I agree with the quote that was saying that some of those crimes could have been prevented had they actually done the work.
Yep.
And then for body count, I gave it a 6. And the only reason I gave it a 6 is because we do have to, like I've said in some of the past episodes, we do have to reserve body count being a 10 for very specific types of cases that we're eventually going to discuss on the show, because there are some people who have sexually assaulted and murdered up into like the 150 range.
Yeah, hundreds.
And obviously taking any life is going to be a horrible act to begin with. Just killing one person is enough to make you evil, in my opinion. But just on the basis of ranking, we do have to take into regard, you know, some of the other crimes that we're going to discuss. Exactly.
Yeah. All right, so we got y'all submitted all your numbers. I got them plugged in. Let's go ahead and calculate. Doop, 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 doop. All right, and we have an 8.53 for the Ken and Barbie Killers.
I think that is a very solid
8.53.
But honestly, I hope they rot. To be honest,
Yeah.
and that is just just a ranking, y'all.
She'll get her comeuppance. She'll get her comeuppance. But no, I think that's super accurate. Like close to 9.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I think these people are just, you know, truly wicked. They're on the upper side of wicked.
Yeah. No, they definitely are. And like I said, they there's no excuse for their behavior. And I wish that Karla would have had to spend more time in prison. I hope that her children get far away from her as soon as possible.
As soon as possible.
And I hope that they both rot.
Yep.
So, and you can zoom in on my face on that one, Devria.
Rot.
But thank y'all so much for listening to that very heinous crime with us. Go watch some like adult comedy or something after that one. I don't know, something to make you feel better. That's what makes me feel better, because that was heavy.
Yeah, it was.
I'm sweating, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But thank you guys so much for listening to that. If there's any cases that you want us to cover and rate on this show, go ahead and comment it below.
Yeah, you can comment on Spotify
now.
and YouTube and anything else, I think.
Yeah, so comment what you would like to hear us talk about, and also comment your rating below, and we'll see if everybody's kind of thinking the same sort of little...
We'll update as I get scores, we'll update it.
Malia said, "Thank you guys. I will go play Stardew Valley." That's a great choice. But thank you all so much for listening to today's episode. We hope you had a great time listening to it, as best as you could, listening to heinous crimes. But With that, my name is Madison Timmons.
And I'm Samantha.
And don't forget, the next time you're walking down the sidewalk, you might just be passing a perfect 10.